My best friend asked me to be his worst man 3 weeks before his wedding. At first, I thought he was joking. We were sitting in the back corner of a small bar we'd been going to since college. It was the kind of place where the tables were always slightly sticky and the bartender knew what we wanted before we ordered. Daniel had been quiet for most of the evening. That wasn't unusual. What was unusual was that he hadn't made a single joke. Finally, he put his glass down. "I need to ask you something," I smiled. "You're getting married. I'm guessing this is where you ask me to be your best man." He looked at me. "No," I laughed. "Okay, what then?" "I want you to be my worst man." I stared at him. He didn't smile. "What does that mean?" "I don't know yet." "That isn't reassuring." "I know." He looked down at his hands. "I need you to promise me something first." "What?" "If I tell you everything is fine at the wedding." He paused. "Don't believe me." I stopped smiling. "Daniel, what the hell are you talking about?" "Just promise." "Why would I need to do that?" "Because you know me." "That is exactly why I'm asking." He looked at me for several seconds, then he said quietly, "I don't think you do anymore." That was the first thing he had said all night that actually scared me. Daniel and I had known each other for 22 years. We met when we were 19. He was the guy who could walk into a room full of strangers and somehow leave with 3 new friends. I was the opposite. I watched people. Daniel talked to them. Somehow it worked. We became friends almost immediately. Over the years, we'd lived together for a while, started jobs at the same time, helped each other through breakups, funerals, bad apartments, worse bosses, and the kind of financial disasters that seem funny only after you've survived them. I knew his favorite food. I knew what he ordered when he was sick. I knew he hated flying but pretended he didn't. I knew he always checked the door twice before leaving the house. I knew that when he was genuinely angry, he became quiet. And I knew that when he was uncomfortable, he made jokes. So when he told me I didn't know him anymore, I didn't know what to do with that. "Are you having doubts about getting married?" He shook his head. "No." "Then what's the problem?" "I can't tell you yet." "That's a pretty terrible way to ask someone to be involved in your wedding." "I know." "Does Emma know you're doing this?" He looked up. "Yes." That surprised me. Emma was his fiancée. I'd met her 3 years earlier. She was smart, calm, and much harder to read than Daniel. The first time I met her, I'd expected her to be intimidated by the fact that Daniel and I had been friends for so long. She wasn't. She sat across from us at dinner and listened to our stupid college stories with a smile. At one point, Daniel started telling a story about the time we drove 6 hours to attend a concert we'd forgotten to buy tickets for. Emma looked at me. "Did he actually do that?" "Yes." She looked back at Daniel. "You were 21? 20. That explains everything." Daniel laughed. I liked her. More importantly, I had never seen Daniel happier. So his strange request made even less sense. "Does Emma know what you want me to do?" "Yes." "And she's okay with it?" He nodded. "What exactly am I supposed to do?" "Nothing." I frowned. "Nothing?" "Not yet." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He pushed it across the table. I opened it. There were 4 lines written in his handwriting. "Don't give a normal best man speech. Don't tell them I'm the best man you've ever known. If I say I'm fine, ask me if I mean it. And don't let me change your mind." I read it twice. "What is this?" "My instructions." "For what?" "The wedding." I looked at him. "Daniel, are you trying to ruin your own wedding?" "No." "Then what are you trying to do?" He looked toward the window. "I want one person there who won't let me perform." "Perform?" He turned back to me. "You'll understand later." I hated that answer, but I knew Daniel well enough to recognize when he had decided something. Once he made up his mind, pushing harder usually made him shut down. So I folded the paper and put it in my wallet. "Fine." He looked relieved. "Thank you. But I'm warning you." "What?" "If you expect me to embarrass you in front of 200 people, I'm going to need a much better explanation." He smiled for the first time that night. "That isn't what I want." "What do you want?" He stared at me. "I want you to notice when I'm lying." I didn't understand what he meant. Not then. A week later, I started noticing things. The first was his wedding ring. He'd picked it up from the jeweler months earlier. Emma had shown me a photograph. Simple gold band. Nothing flashy. But one evening, when I was at his apartment, I noticed it sitting untouched inside the box. "Why aren't you wearing it?" Daniel looked over. "I don't wear it until the wedding." "Right," I laughed. "Sorry, that sounded stupid." He smiled. "No, it's fine." I looked at him. "Are you?" He froze for half a second. Then he laughed. "You remembered." "Remembered what?" "My stupid request." I hadn't realized he'd noticed me testing it. "Are you fine?" He nodded. "Yeah." Then he walked into the kitchen. I stood there for a moment. It was such a normal interaction that I almost forgot about it. But I didn't. The second thing happened 3 days later. Daniel called me at 11 at night. "You awake?" "Now I am. Can you come over? Everything okay?" "Yeah." I waited. "Daniel?" "I'm fine." I remembered the note. I drove over. When I arrived, he was sitting on the back steps with 2 beers. He handed me one. "You look terrible." "Thanks." "You're welcome." We sat there. For almost 10 minutes, he didn't say anything. Then he asked, "Do you think people can become someone they don't recognize?" I looked at him. "That's a weird question." "I know. Are you asking about yourself?" "No." I waited. "I'm asking generally." I laughed. "You're terrible at lying." He looked at me. Then he smiled. "Maybe." That was it. No explanation. No confession. Nothing. The next morning, Emma called me. I almost didn't answer. "Hey." "Hi." She sounded unusually serious. "Did Daniel talk to you last night?" "Yes." "What did he say?" "Not much." She was quiet. Then she asked, "Did he seem okay?" I leaned against the kitchen counter. "Why are you asking me?" "Because you know him." I almost laughed. "Apparently I don't." She didn't respond. "What happened?" "Nothing." "Emma." She sighed. "I need you to promise me something too." I felt my stomach tighten. "What?" "If Daniel asks you whether you think he's making a mistake." She stopped. "What?" "Don't answer immediately." I stared at the wall. "Why?" "I can't explain." "Does he know you're calling me?" "No." "Then why are you telling me?" Another pause. "Because I think you're the only person he'll listen to." That made no sense. "Emma, is he trying to call off the wedding?" "No." "Are you?" "No." "Then what is happening?" Her voice became quieter. "I don't know." That answer frightened me more than anything else she'd said. Because Emma wasn't someone who admitted she didn't know. She was always composed, always certain, but now she sounded scared. "Then what do you want me to do?" "Nothing yet." I almost laughed. That seems to be everyone's answer. "I know." She hung up. I stood there holding my phone. For the first time, I wondered if Daniel's strange request had nothing to do with the wedding. Maybe the wedding was simply the place where something else was going to happen. That evening, I saw Daniel again. He was standing outside a restaurant, waiting for Emma. I walked toward him. He smiled. "You came." "Of course." "You ready for the big day?" He nodded. "Absolutely." I watched him. His smile looked perfect. His posture was relaxed. His voice sounded normal. Anyone else would have believed him. But I remembered the note in my wallet. "If I say I'm fine, ask me if I mean it." So I did. "Are you?" The smile disappeared. For just a second. Then it came back. "Yeah." "Do you mean it?" He looked at me for a long time. Then he said, "I don't know." Before I could ask anything else, Emma walked out of the restaurant. She looked at Daniel, then at me, and for the briefest moment, neither of them spoke. It was the first time I realized they were both waiting for something. I just didn't know what. For the next few days, I tried to convince myself that I was overthinking everything. Daniel was getting married. People behave strangely before weddings. They got nervous. They questioned decisions. They remembered old relationships. They suddenly cared about flowers, seating arrangements, and whether their relatives would complain about the food. Maybe that was all this was. Maybe Daniel had simply reached the point where the wedding felt real. Then I found the photograph. It was sitting on his kitchen counter when I stopped by after work. I picked it up without thinking. Daniel and Emma were standing outside a restaurant. They were smiling. But the photograph wasn't from their engagement. It was dated almost 2 years earlier. Before they'd announced they were together, I turned it over. There was a handwritten note on the back. The night he finally told her. I looked at Daniel. "What is this?" He froze. Then he took the photograph from my hand. "Where did you find it?" "Here." He put it face down. "It's nothing." I stared at him. "You're doing that thing again." "What thing?" "Saying something is nothing when it obviously isn't." He smiled. "It's just an old photo." "From before you and Emma were together?" "Yeah." "Why does it say the night he finally told her?" He didn't answer. I waited. Finally he said, "I told her something." "What?" He shook his head. "Not now." I almost pushed him. Instead, I remembered the note in my wallet. "Don't let me change your mind." So I asked, "Does Emma know I saw this?" "Yes." That stopped me. "She knows?" "Yes." "And she doesn't care?" Daniel looked away. "She knows." It was such a strange answer that I knew there was more. But before I could ask, his phone rang. He looked at the screen. "Emma," he answered. "Hey." I couldn't hear what she said. Daniel listened. His face changed. Not dramatically. Just enough. "Okay," he said. Then, "I'll tell him." He hung up. "Tell me what?" He looked at me. "She wants you to come to dinner tomorrow." "Why?" "I don't know." "You really don't?" He smiled. No, I didn't believe him. The next evening, Emma invited us to her apartment. Dinner was normal at first, too normal. She made pasta. Daniel opened a bottle of wine. They talked about the wedding, the flowers, the seating arrangement, her parents, his sister. Everything sounded ordinary. Then Emma put her fork down. Can I ask you something? She was looking at me. Sure. Why do you think Daniel asked you to be his worst man? I looked at Daniel. He was staring at his plate. I don't know. What do you think? I hesitated. I thought maybe he was afraid of getting married. Emma nodded. Daniel didn't look up. Does that surprise you? I asked her. No. Does he tell you he's afraid? She smiled. Daniel doesn't tell people when he's afraid. I looked at him. He finally raised his eyes. She's not wrong. Emma continued. That's why I asked you to come. For what? To see whether you notice. Notice what? She looked at Daniel. He shook his head slightly. She stopped. That tiny movement told me more than her words had. They had discussed this. Whatever was happening, both of them knew about it. I leaned back. Are you two testing me? Emma smiled. No, Daniel said. Not exactly. I looked between them. That's reassuring. Emma laughed softly. Then she said something that changed the entire conversation. I don't think Daniel wants you to stop the wedding. I looked at Daniel. He didn't deny it. Then what does he want? Emma looked at him. He wants you to stop him from pretending. I felt a chill. Pretending what? She didn't answer. Daniel did. That I'm okay. I stared at him. You're not? He looked down. I don't know. That isn't an answer. I know. Then what is happening? Daniel rubbed his face. I've been doing this for years. Doing what? Making everything easier for everyone else. I frowned. That doesn't sound like a problem. It is when you don't know how to stop. Emma reached across the table and touched his hand. He looked at her. I don't want you to explain it for me. She nodded. I won't. I looked at them. There was something intimate about that exchange. Not romantic. Not exactly. It was more like two people who had already had this conversation many times. I suddenly felt like the outsider, which was strange. I'd been Daniel's best friend for 22 years, yet Emma seemed to know how to read him better than I did. I hated that feeling, so I asked the question I'd been avoiding. Is there someone else? Daniel looked at me. Emma's expression didn't change. What makes you think that? The photograph. Silence. Then Daniel said, No. Then who was the woman? He looked confused. What woman? The photograph from 2 years ago. Emma glanced at him. Daniel closed his eyes. Oh, what? He looked at me. You mean Sarah? I didn't know the name. Who is Sarah? My ex-wife. I stared at him. You never told me you were talking to her. I wasn't. You have photographs together. She's my ex-wife. That doesn't answer the question. Daniel looked at Emma. She nodded. He sighed. Sarah called me that night. Why? Because she needed help. With what? He hesitated. She was leaving town. I frowned. Why? Because she was scared. Of what? Daniel looked at the table. She'd found out she was sick. The room went silent. I looked at Emma. She already knew. She's okay now? Daniel nodded. She got treatment. I sat back. So the photograph was taken the night she told me. I looked at the note on the back. The night he finally told her. Told her what? Daniel looked at me. That I didn't blame her. For what? He didn't answer. Emma did. For leaving him. I looked at Daniel. He had never told me about the divorce that way. I'd always thought Sarah left because they'd grown apart. That's what Daniel had told me. She wanted something different. He was fine. It was mutual. No hard feelings. Now I realized I'd never asked whether any of that was true. What actually happened? Daniel looked at me. She left because I wouldn't let her see me struggle. I didn't understand. He explained. When Sarah got sick, Daniel tried to take care of everything. He went to appointments, handled paperwork, paid bills, cooked, worked, smiled. Whenever Sarah asked how he was doing, he said he was fine. Eventually, she told him she couldn't live with someone who wouldn't let her know him. So she left. Yes, and you never told me? You didn't ask. The words hit me harder this time. I remembered how often I'd asked him whether he was okay, and how often he'd answered, I'm fine. I'd always accepted it. I looked at him. Why didn't you tell me? He smiled sadly. Because I didn't want you to worry. I felt angry, not at him, at myself. You've been doing this with me too. He looked at me. What? Every time something was wrong, you told me you were fine. He looked away. I continued. And I believed you. Daniel didn't answer. Emma looked at me. That's why he asked you? Because I believed him? She nodded. He doesn't want you to become another person who lets him hide. I looked at Daniel. He finally said, I don't need you to expose me. Then what do you need? He took a breath. I need you to stop helping me lie. I sat there in silence. The wedding was only 12 days away. And suddenly I understood that whatever was going to happen at that wedding had nothing to do with stopping Daniel from marrying Emma. It was about whether he would finally allow the people closest to him to see him without the version of himself he'd spent years performing. But there was still one thing I didn't understand. If Emma already knew all of this, why had she agreed to marry him? Emma didn't answer my question immediately. If you already know all of this, I said, why are you marrying him? She looked at Daniel. He was staring at the table. Finally she said, because I know what he's trying to change. I frowned. That doesn't answer the question. No, she said, it doesn't. Daniel looked at her. You don't have to. I know. She turned back to me. I'll let him explain. Daniel took a breath. When Sarah left, I thought the problem was that I cared too much. I waited. I thought I had been too available, too involved, too worried about her. That doesn't sound like you. He smiled. That was the point. He explained that after the divorce, he made himself a promise. He would never become that version of himself again. He wouldn't depend on anyone. He wouldn't need anyone. And most importantly, he wouldn't let anyone worry about him. So he became the person everyone could rely on. The person who answered every call. The person who showed up at 2 in the morning. The person who always had a solution. The person who could walk into a room after the worst day of his life and make everyone laugh. I listened. Then I said, that sounds like the Daniel I know. He looked at me. Exactly. That was when something inside me shifted. I'd always considered those things his best qualities. His reliability, his calmness, his ability to handle pressure, his refusal to complain. I'd admired them. Maybe I'd never wondered what they cost him. Emma picked up her glass. When I met him, I thought he was the most emotionally stable person I'd ever met. Daniel laughed. I wasn't. No, she smiled. You were just very good at hiding. She looked at me. The first time he told me he was fine, I believed him. So what changed? I saw him after his mother called. Daniel looked down. Emma continued. He got off the phone and sat in his car for almost 20 minutes. He didn't call anyone? No. What did he do? Nothing. She paused. He just stared through the windshield. I looked at Daniel. You never told me that. I know. Why? He shrugged. I was fine. Emma smiled. You see? I didn't. What? That answer. She pointed at him. That's exactly what he does. Daniel looked embarrassed. I was trying to protect her. Emma shook her head. You were trying to protect everyone. She turned toward me. And that's when I realized something. What? He doesn't lie because he wants to deceive people. She paused. He lies because he thinks the truth would become someone else's responsibility. I didn't say anything. That sounded exactly like him. And suddenly I remembered dozens of moments I had forgotten. Daniel canceling plans and saying he was tired. Daniel missing his father's birthday because he had too much work. Daniel disappearing for a weekend after his divorce and telling me he'd gone hiking. I'd never questioned any of it. Why would I? He'd always seemed fine. Then Emma asked me something. Do you remember the night you called him after his father died? I frowned. Yes. What did he tell you? That he was okay. What did you say? I thought about it. I told him to get some sleep. Emma nodded. Daniel closed his eyes. I felt a cold feeling in my stomach. You were there? No, Emma said. He called me after. I looked at Daniel. You were crying? He didn't answer. Emma did. For almost an hour. I stared at him. You told me you were fine. I know. You were crying? Yes. And then you called Emma? No. She shook her head. I called him. I looked between them. You never told me. Daniel gave me a tired smile. Apparently I'm very consistent. I didn't laugh. For the first time in 22 years, I wondered how much of my friendship with Daniel had been built around things he didn't tell me. That thought hurt. Not because he'd kept secrets, because I'd made it easy for him to keep them. I had always been proud that we didn't need to talk about everything. We could sit in silence. We could make jokes. We could go months without discussing anything serious and still feel like nothing had changed. I'd thought that was what made us close. Maybe sometimes it had just been convenient. Emma stood up and started clearing the plates. Daniel helped her. I watched them move around the kitchen together. They didn't need to explain what they were doing. They already knew. There was something about their relationship that I hadn't understood. They weren't together because Emma believed she could fix him. She was with him because he had finally started allowing her to see him when he couldn't fix himself. That was different. When we finished dinner, Daniel walked me outside. The street was quiet. He put his hands in his pockets. "You're angry." I looked at him. "A little." "Why?" "Because I've been your best friend for 22 years. "I know. And Emma knows things about you that I don't." He looked down. "I didn't tell her everything. But she noticed." He nodded. "That doesn't make me feel better." "I know." I stopped walking. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" He looked at me. "Would you have listened?" The question caught me off guard. "Of course," he smiled. "You would have tried to fix it." I opened my mouth, then closed it, because I knew he was right. "If you'd called me crying," I said, "I would have come over." "I know." "I would have stayed." "I know." "Then why?" "Because you'd have asked me what happened." "And?" I would have had to answer. I stared at him. "And you didn't want to?" "No." "Why?" He looked toward the street. "Because once I started talking, I wasn't sure I'd know how to stop." That was the first time I'd ever heard Daniel admit he was afraid of something. Not afraid of losing someone, not afraid of getting hurt, afraid of being seen once the performance stopped. I stepped closer. "You don't have to do that with me." He smiled. "That's what I said to myself for 20 years. I didn't know how to respond." He looked at me. "That's why I need you at the wedding." "To watch you?" "To stop me." "From what?" "From becoming the person everyone expects me to be." I thought about the note. "If I say I'm fine, ask me if I mean it." "What happens if you don't?" He shrugged. "Then I'll probably have a very good wedding." I frowned. "That doesn't sound terrible." "It isn't." He smiled. "That's the problem." I didn't understand. He continued. "I can make everything look perfect." He looked toward the house. "I've had a lot of practice." Then he walked inside. I stayed outside for another minute. When I finally drove home, I took the note from my wallet and read it again. This time, one line bothered me more than the others. "Don't give a normal best man speech." I had assumed that meant he didn't want the usual stories. Now I wondered if it meant something else. Maybe he didn't want me to stand there and tell everyone what a great man he was. Maybe he wanted me to tell them who he was when nobody was watching. But there was still something I couldn't reconcile. If Daniel had spent years hiding his pain, why had he chosen a wedding to finally stop? And why did he need me to do it in front of everyone? I didn't have the answer. Then, 2 days before the wedding, I got a message from Sarah. I hadn't spoken to her in years. The message contained only one sentence. "You need to ask Daniel what happened the night he came to see me." I read it again. Then a second message arrived. "And don't believe him when he tells you it was nothing."